Imagine this for a second. You plant a tree today. Just one. You water it. You take care of it for a short time. And then something interesting happens. It keeps growing. Year after year. Season after season. Not just surviving, producing. Food. Real food. Fruit nuts harvests that come back again and again without replanting, without starting over. Now fast forward 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. That same tree is still there, still producing, still feeding. And not just you, but your kids. Maybe even their kids. Now here's the part most people never think about. Some trees don't just produce for a few seasons. They produce for decades, sometimes over 100 years, and in some cases, far longer. Which means one decision you make today can outlast you, can keep producing long after you stop maintaining it. And that's where everything changes. Because most gardening advice focuses on short-term results, annual crops, quick harvests, plant, harvest, repeat. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what if you also built something long-term, something stable, something that compounds over time? Because here's what most people don't realize. Perennial food systems are one of the most powerful ways to create long-term food security. Low effort over time, high return over decades. And once established, they require far less work than people expect. Now here's the truth most nurseries won't tell you. They make money when you come back. When you replant, when things fail, when you need replacements. But long-living, high-producing trees, those are once decisions. You plant them, and they just keep giving. So today I'm going to show you 10 trees you can plant once that can feed your family for decades and in some cases generations. These are trees that produce consistently, require low maintenance, once established adapt to different climates, and provide real, usable food year after year. And I promise you, one of the trees on this list is so productive, so reliable, that once it's established, it almost feels unfair. Now, before we get into the list, I want to know something. Where are you growing? Drop your state or your growing zone in the comments. Because long-term trees are all about choosing the right plant for your climate. A tree that thrives in one zone can struggle in another. And if you get that wrong, you lose years. But if you get it right, you gain decades. Also be honest for a second. Have you ever planted something, put in the effort, and then it just didn't last? It died. It stopped producing. It didn't live up to expectations. That's what we're fixing today. Because the goal is not just to grow something once. The goal is to plant something that keeps working for you, year after year, with less effort over time. Now, one important thing before we start. These trees are long-term investments. They need a little patience at the beginning, but once they establish, they become easier, stronger, more productive. That's the trade. Short-term effort for long-term return. Now, the first tree on this list is one of the most powerful examples of this concept, because once it starts producing, it doesn't just give you fruit, it gives you consistency. Number 1, apple tree. Now, this is the tree most people understand immediately, because apples are familiar. They're not exotic. They're not confusing. They're something families already eat, already buy, and already know how to use. Fresh apples, apple sauce, apple pies, dried apple slices, cider, even animal feed if you have a homestead setup. That's why the apple tree is one of the best long-term food trees you can plant. Now here's the problem it solves. Most people want food security, but they don't want a crop that feels unfamiliar. They want something practical, something their family will actually eat, something that doesn't sit on the counter because nobody knows what to do with it. Apple trees solve that, because when an apple tree starts producing well, it doesn't give you a handful of food. It can give you buckets. And once you learn how to store, dry, freeze, or preserve that harvest, one tree becomes more than a tree. It becomes a seasonal food supply. Now here's the bonus value. Apple trees can live and produce for a very long time when properly cared for. Some old apple trees continue producing for generations. And that's the part most people forget. When you plant an apple tree, you're not just thinking about this year. You're thinking about the next 20, 30, 40 years, maybe longer. Now, here's the expert tip. Choose the right rootstock. This matters more than most beginners realize. A standard apple tree can become large and long-lived. A semi-dwarf tree is easier to manage but still productive. A dwarf tree is smaller and faster to harvest, but may not live as long. So if your goal is long-term production, don't just pick the prettiest tree at the nursery. Ask what rootstock it's on. Ask how big it gets. Ask how long it typically lives. And most importantly, ask whether it needs a pollination partner. Because many apple trees need another compatible variety nearby to produce well. This is where people lose years. They plant one tree. They wait. The tree flowers. But fruit production is poor. And they think the tree failed. But the tree didn't fail. The planting failed. Now here's something powerful. Apple trees teach you the first rule of long-term food planting. Plant for systems, not just single trees. One apple tree can be valuable, but two compatible apple trees, that becomes a stronger system. Better pollination, better fruit set, more reliable harvests. And when you combine early season, mid-season, and late season varieties, you stretch the harvest window. Now, instead of getting all your apples at once, you get food over time. That's how a tree turns into a food strategy. Now picture this. It's late summer or early fall. You walk outside. The branches are heavy. You pick one apple and bite into it right there. It's crisp, fresh, nothing like the waxy fruit from a grocery store shelf. And then you realize something. This tree is not just decoration. It is working. It is feeding your home. And it can keep doing that for decades. That is why apple trees deserve a place on this list. Now the next tree takes this idea even further. Because it is one of the most reliable, long-lived food trees in the world, and in the right climate, it can produce so much food that one mature tree can feel like a small farm by itself. Number 2, chestnut tree. Now, this is where things shift from fruit to real calorie-dense food. Because chestnut trees don't just produce something you snack on, they produce something that can actually feed a family. Now here's the problem it solves. Most fruit trees give you vitamins, flavor variety, but they don't give you bulk calories. They don't give you something filling, something you can rely on as a staple. Chestnut trees fix that, because chestnuts are closer to a carbohydrate source, almost like a grain, but growing on a tree. And that's powerful. Now here's the bonus value. Chestnut trees can live a very long time, decades, even over 100 years in the right conditions. And once they mature, they can produce large quantities of nuts every year. Now imagine that. One tree, producing pounds and pounds of food, year after year. Now here's the expert tip. Plant at least 2 trees for pollination. Chestnuts are not self-fertile in most cases. This is another place where beginners lose time. They plant one tree. It grows beautifully, but production is low or non-existent. The fix is simple. Plant in pairs. Now here's something powerful. Chestnut trees scale over time. The first few years, slow. But once they mature, production increases significantly. This is not a quick-win tree. This is a long-term investment tree. Now step back for a second. You now have a familiar fruit producer apple, and now a calorie-producing staple chestnut. That's a completely different level of planning. You're not just planting for flavor, you're planting for food security. Now picture this, fall season. You collect chestnuts from the ground, roast them, store them, use them in meals. This is not just gardening anymore. This is production. Now the next tree on this list adds something different again. Because it combines high nutrition, long life, and one of the most versatile foods you can grow. Number 3, olive tree. Now this is where things start to feel ancient. Because olive trees are not just productive, they are legendary. Some olive trees have been producing for hundreds of years, not decades, centuries. and that changes how you think about planting. Now here's the problem it solves. Most people plant for short-term harvest, a few seasons, maybe a few years. But what if you planted something that could outlive you? Something that could keep producing long after you're gone? Olive trees represent that. Now here's the bonus value. They are incredibly resilient, drought-tolerant, heat-tolerant, low maintenance, once established, which makes them perfect for the right climates. Now here's the expert tip. Drainage matters more than anything. Olive trees hate wet roots. If the soil stays soggy, the tree struggles. So plant them in well-draining soil or even slightly elevated areas. Now here's something powerful. Olive trees don't just give you food. They give you options. Fresh olives, cured olives, olive oil, preserved food that can last months or longer. This is long-term thinking. Now step back again. You now have fruit apple, staple calories, chestnut. And now, preserved food potential olive. Different roles, different strengths, same long-term system. Now imagine this. Hot summer day. You walk past your olive tree. It's not demanding anything. It's not fragile. It's just there, quietly growing, slowly producing, year after year. Now the next tree on this list adds something completely different, because it doesn't just produce food. It produces one of the most nutrient-dense foods you can grow. Number 4, mulberry tree. Now this is where things start to feel almost effortless, because mulberry trees are one of the easiest, fastest producing food trees you can grow. They don't demand perfect soil. They don't need constant care. And once established, they produce heavily, very heavily. Now here's the problem it solves. Many fruit trees require patience, years before you see meaningful harvests. Mulberry changes that. It grows quickly, and it starts producing sooner than most long-term trees. Now here's the bonus value. The yield can be incredible. Buckets of berries, season after season. And unlike delicate fruits, mulberries don't require constant protection or perfect timing. They grow, they ripen, they drop. Simple. Now here's the expert tip. Plant mulberry trees away from patios, cars, or walkways. Because when they produce a lot, and falling fruit can stain surfaces. Place them in a dedicated growing area where that abundance becomes an advantage, not a problem. Now here's something powerful. Mulberries are low-intervention trees. They don't need you constantly checking on them. They don't fail easily. They just keep going. Now step back again. You now have fruit apple staple calories, chestnut, preserved food olive, and now high-yield production, mulberry. This is where your system starts producing in volume. Now imagine this. Early summer. You walk outside. The ground beneath your tree is covered with ripe berries. You pick fresh ones. You collect the rest. You freeze them, dry them, turn them into jams. This is not a small harvest. This is abundance. Now the next tree on this list adds something different again. Because it doesn't just produce a lot, it produces one of the most nutrient-dense nuts you can grow. Number 5, walnut tree. Now this is where things become serious. Because walnut trees are not just about food. They're about long-term value, deep roots, strong structure, and a tree that can live for generations. Now, here's the problem it solves. Many fruit trees produce quickly, but don't always last. Or they require ongoing maintenance to stay productive. Walnut trees are different. They are built for the long run. Once established, they become one of the most reliable long-term producers you can plant. Now here's the bonus value. Walnuts are incredibly nutrient-dense, healthy fats, protein, long storage life. This is not just snack food. This is survival-level nutrition. Now here's the expert tip. Give walnut trees space. They grow large. They need room for roots and canopy, and they don't like competition. So don't crowd them with other plants. Now here's something powerful. Walnut trees are legacy trees. You don't plant them just for yourself. You plant them knowing someone else will benefit from them later. Now step back again. You now have fruit apple, staple, calories, chestnut, preserved food olive, high-yield mulberry, and now, long-term nutrition, walnut. This is not just gardening anymore. This is planning. Now imagine this. Fall season again. You collect walnuts, store them, use them throughout the year, and the tree keeps producing year after year. Now the next tree on this list adds something different again, because it grows fast, produces early, and fits into smaller spaces more easily. Number 6. Fig tree. Now this is where things start to feel efficient, because fig trees are one of the best combinations of speed, reliability, and long-term production. They don't need pollination. They don't require complex care. And once they're established, they produce consistently. Now here's the problem it solves. Some trees require multiple varieties. Some require insects. Some require perfect timing. Figs remove all of that. They are self-sufficient, and that makes them incredibly valuable in a long-term system. Now here's the bonus value. They can produce multiple crops in a year depending on climate, which means you're not waiting for one single harvest window. You're getting repeated returns. Now here's the expert tip. Keep them slightly stressed once established. Not neglected, but not overwatered either. Figs produce better when they're not overly comfortable. Too much water or fertilizer can reduce fruit production. Now here's something powerful. Fig trees adapt. They grow in ground. They grow in containers. They handle pruning well, which means you can fit them into almost any space. Now step back again. You now have fruit apple, staple, calories, chestnut, preserved food, olive, high-yield mulberry, long-term nutrition, walnut, and now, fast, reliable production fig. This is becoming a complete food system. Now imagine this. Warm afternoon. You walk outside. Pick a ripe fig straight from the tree. Soft, sweet, fresh. And you didn't go to a store for it. That's the difference. Now the next tree on this list builds on this idea, but adds something even more powerful, because it produces one of the most calorie-dense foods in the world. Number 7, almond tree. Now this is where things start to become highly strategic, because almond trees don't just produce food, they produce one of the most valuable nutrient-dense crops you can grow. High in healthy fats, rich in protein, long shelf life, and incredibly versatile. Now here's the problem it solves. Most fruit trees give you freshness, but not long-term storage. Almonds fix that. You can harvest them, dry them, store them, and use them for months, even years if stored properly. Now here's the bonus value. They're relatively low maintenance once established. They love full sun. They tolerate dry conditions better than many other trees, which makes them ideal for certain climates. Now here's the expert tip. Choose self-fertile varieties if you only want to plant one tree. Otherwise, like many nut trees, they benefit from cross-pollination. This is another place where planning matters. Because if you get pollination right, production increases significantly. Now here's something powerful. Almond trees turn your system into something more resilient. You're no longer relying on just fresh harvests. You're building stored food capacity. And that's a completely different level of thinking. Now step back again. You now have fresh fruit, high-yield berries, staple calories, long-term storage nuts, and now preserved high-value nutrition almonds. This is not random planting. This is design. Now imagine this. Late season. You harvest almonds, dry them, store them, and months later, you're still benefiting from that one tree. Now, the next tree on this list adds something different again, because it produces one of the sweetest, most energy-rich foods you can grow. Number 8, date palm. Now this is where things become incredibly powerful, because date palms don't just produce fruit, they produce energy, real dense, long-lasting energy. Sweet, rich fruit that has been used for centuries as a staple food in some of the harshest climates on Earth. Now here's the problem it solves. Most fruits are refreshing, but they don't sustain you for long. Dates are different. They are high in natural sugars, calories, and nutrients, which means a single harvest can go a long way. Now here's the bonus value. Date palms thrive in hot, dry climates. They handle heat extremely well. And once established, they become highly productive. Now here's the expert tip. Date palms need space and time. They are not fast. They require patience. But once they mature, the yield can be massive, and that patience pays off for decades. Now here's something powerful. Date palms represent long-term resilience. They are not about quick wins. They are about building something that continues producing under tough conditions. Now step back again. You now have fresh fruit, staple calories, long-term storage, high-value nutrition, and now, energy-dense food dates. This is a complete survival-level system. Now imagine this. Hot climate, dry conditions. Other crops struggle, but your date palm is still producing, still feeding, still working. Now, the next tree on this list adds something different again, because it doesn't just produce food. It produces one of the easiest, most forgiving harvests you can grow. Number 9. Pear tree. Now, this is where things start to feel dependable, because pear trees are one of the most reliable fruit producers you can plant. They don't demand constant attention. They don't fail easily. And once they mature, they produce year after year with very little change. Now here's the problem it solves. Some trees are productive, but inconsistent. One year strong, next year weak. Pear trees are different. They are steady. And that consistency matters when you're thinking long-term. Now here's the bonus value. Pears store well. Not as long as nuts, but long enough to extend your harvest beyond the season, which means you're not forced to use everything immediately. Now here's the expert tip. Harvest slightly early and let pears ripen off the tree. This improves texture and flavor, and prevents loss from overripe fruit dropping. Now here's something powerful. Pear trees are low drama. They don't need constant correction. They don't demand perfection. They just keep working. Now step back again. You now have fresh fruit, stored food, staple calories, high yield systems, and now consistent production. Pear. This is what stability looks like. Now imagine this. Late summer. You pick pears, store them, use them over weeks, and the tree keeps producing year after year. Now the final tree on this list brings everything together, because it represents one of the longest living, most resilient food trees you can plant. Number 10. Oak tree acorn producing oak. Now this is where everything comes together, because oak trees are not just trees. They are systems, long-living, deep-rooted, and capable of producing for centuries. Yes, centuries. Now here's the problem it solves. Most people don't think of oak trees as food trees. They see shade. They see landscaping. But historically, acorns have been used as a real food source. Processed ground, turned into flour. Used for survival, for resilience, for long-term living. Now here's the bonus value. Oak trees are incredibly resilient. They handle drought. They handle storms. They adapt to different soils. And once established, they become almost unstoppable. Now here's the expert tip. Plant them where they can grow long-term, because oak trees are not temporary. They are generational. Give them space. Give them time, and they will outlast almost everything else in your system. Now here's something powerful. Oak trees represent the ultimate long-term mindset. You are not planting for next year. You are not planting for convenience. You are planting for legacy. Now step back and look at everything you've built. Fruit for freshness, nuts for storage, staple calories, high-yield trees, resilient systems, and now a generational anchor oak. This is no longer gardening. This is a long-term food strategy. A system that can feed your family not just this season, but for decades, even generations. Now here's the truth. You don't need all 10 trees. You don't need a massive property. You just need to start. One tree, one decision, one step towards something that grows over time. Because the earlier you plant, the sooner the system begins. So here's what I want to know. Which tree are you planting first? And what does your space look like right now? Drop it in the comments. And if this changed how you think about planting, make sure you subscribe. Because once you understand long-term systems like this, you stop thinking in seasons and start thinking in decades.